श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Okay, so we will start from where we left. 30th sloka of second chapter of the second canto of Bhagavatam. Sabhuta Sukshmendriya Sannikarsham Manomayam Devamayam Vikaryam Samsadhya Gatya Sahatena Yati Vijnana Vijnana Tattvam Gunasannirodham. The devotee, thus surpassing the gross and subtle forms of coverings, enter the plane of egoism, and in that status, he merges the material modes of nature, ignorance, and passion in this point of neutralization, and thus reaches egoism and goodness. After this, all egoism is merged in Mahat Tattva, and he comes to the point of pure self-realization. So, as we were discussing, this is kind of a yogic process of reversing the whole creation, or especially the body, that a person possesses. So we all know, like, we are caught up in this material body, and then to be liberated means to get out of this body. So sometimes people think that if they have so much of problems in life, if I commit suicide, so then no, I will get out of this body and then I can get liberation. But it is just a foolishness, because they can only get out of the gross body. Still the subtle body remains, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, and they cannot just give it up like that. So it is not possible for them to give up that body. Breaking the subtle body is called liberation. Gross body, like, no, any number of times we can break and we can get, it doesn't matter much. So actual liberation means to break the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and false ego. And here we see that this particular this one of the yogic process, what it happens is, they try to disintegrate the material elements, then they try to disintegrate the mind and intelligence, and then they try to disintegrate the false ego also, and then they finally come to the pure state of existence. So now, just before proceeding, I would like to give another small uh, concept. So here we see that mind, intelligence, and all, if we are giving it up, that means, are we going to become dumb and things like that? No. The mind, intelligence, and all these things are there present in the soul also. And the material mind, the material intelligence, even for that matter, the material senses like the eyes, tongue, and things like that and all. So it is something like a covering on top of the real senses. The real senses are spiritual in nature. The spirit soul has its own real senses. And these senses are like kind of a superimposition. Just like we have a shirt, if we are wearing a shirt, the shirt has a like hand in the shirt. So but then the hand in the shirt is not the actual hand. I have a hand, and because of that my shirt also has a hand. And if I wear the shirt will look like a hand. No, that portion of the shirt will look like a hand. But if I remove my shirt and keep it down, no, it will all collapse. It doesn't have a form actually. So in the same way, the soul has a form, the soul has senses, the soul has all these this one. So this is all external apparatus, right? So the material mind, the material intelligence, the material senses that I have, these are all external apparatus which is put on top of the soul. But then the ignorance, the matter of ignorance is that we started believing this external apparatus to be the real self. It's like we started believing our dress as our real self, no, like that it has happened. So now this yogic process of reversing, is that it is to disintegrate one by one, like gross body, then subtle body, and then finally the ego is merged, brought to the mode of goodness. That's the best form of ego that can be there in this material world. And then it is disintegrated or merged into the Mahatattva, or the sum total of material energy. So like one by one, all the layers are removed in this way, right? So let's see the purport. Pure self-realization, as we have several times discussed, is the pure consciousness of admitting oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Lord. So here Srila Prabhupada is giving the devotional way of reversing the process. So devotional way of reversing the process is not going to work on these kind of nitty-gritties of how to remove the earth component from the body, how to remove the air component from the body, and things like that. That's a yogic process of doing it. So devotional process of doing it is that, okay, why did I get into this kind of situation? Why did I have even this material body? So I have it because I have gone away from my original position of rendering service to the Supreme Lord, and because of that I have acquired all this body and things like that. So now if I again engage in the service of the Lord, so then this thing has to happen. So this disintegration of the body has to automatically happen, right? So there are two things are there, like one is reverse process and one is the direct process. So like you all might have those who have some background of electronics, you may know that if you pass the current to a motor, the motor revolves, and then if you revolve a motor, then you get a backward current. So many times when you are traveling long distance, you may see this windmills, huge blades of fans will be there, and when wind comes, these fans gets operated, and then that generates current, right? So it is movement of the fan is not restricted only to supply of electricity. The movement of the fan can happen even by the supply of wind. That can also cause the movement of the fan. So in the same way, the yogic process of disintegrating these material elements, what we are studying now in second canto of Bhagavatam, it is not the only way of disintegrating. We can actually, we can go to the root cause. Why do I have this body at all? First, because I have turned away from the service of the Lord. So if I again become a servant of the Lord, automatically all that is needed will be taken care of. All this winding up of the process and all will be taken care of. Right? So Prabhupada is giving that conclusion here, that pure self-realization, as we have several times discussed, is the pure consciousness of admitting oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Lord. So that's the pure consciousness. Okay? Thus, one is reinstated in his original position of transcendental loving service to the Lord, as will be clearly explained in the following verse. This stage of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord without any hopes of emolument from the Lord. Okay, let me just see the meaning of this word emolument. It means a salary free, a profit, or profit from employer or office. Okay, so without any hopes for emolument, that means I will do devotional service and I want so and so things from the Lord. So we have been trained in this fashion. Every time we go to the temple, every time we go to the Lord, go in front of the Lord, we have been trained to ask some things, right? So we have a list of things. I have to get this thing done, get this thing done. Like, no, Lord, please, do all these things to me. So that is not considered to be a good form of devotion. Good form of devotion means, no, I don't want anything, my Lord. I just simply want to serve you. You have been taking care of me since so long. No, I have never asked this question to you. What do you want? No, I want to do something for you. Like I want to cook for you. I want to render some service for you. I want to know what you want, what actually you like. So that is devotion. Devotion to the Lord means that. Otherwise, it is like we are appealing in the courts here, in the material court for some justice. We are going and buying something from the shop, like you give some money and you get some product and things like that. So then that kind of a relationship is not a very good relationship. Still Lord has that relationship with people. But then if we really want to become nice devotees, we have to start inquiring what does the Lord want. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada says a very nice example. If sometimes the father brings a lot of eatables and nice sweets and things like that for the child, and then the child goes to the father and, Father, do you want to also have some? and father only has brought everything. But then when the child asks this thing, it feels very nice. The father feels very nice that, okay, like, no, he has so much of affection for me. He wants me to eat something. So that is something that Lord is actually looking for, right? So that is something that we can actually do to the Lord. So that's what actually we can, this statement means, without any hope of emolument from the Lord, or any other way, can be attained. Okay, so let me just start from this one. This stage of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord without any hopes of emolument from the Lord or any other way can be attained when the material senses are purified and original pure state of senses is revived. So this is possible because material senses are designed for exploitation. Till the time we are in material consciousness, we always look for, I want this, I want that, I want that, like that. So when the material senses are purified, then we can start thinking about what do the Lord wants, right? So now we can practice a little bit, and gradually when our senses become purified, naturally we will start thinking about what does the Lord want, what does other people want, and things like that. So then then a person becomes a brahmana, or a broad-minded person. Broad-minded person means he is not looking for his own self, and his own needs have almost got extinct, and he is always thinking about, how can I serve the Lord, and how can I serve the children of Lord, like that. So it is suggested herein that the process of purifying the senses is by the yogic way. Namely, the gross senses are merged in the mode of ignorance, and the subtle senses are merged in the mode of passion. Then the mind belongs to the mode of goodness, and therefore it is called Devamaya, or godly. Perfect purification of mind is made possible when one is fixed in the conviction of being the eternal servitor of the Lord. Therefore, simply attainment of goodness is also material mode. One has to surpass the stage of material goodness and reach the point of purified goodness, Vasudeva Sattva. So this Vasudeva Sattva helps one to enter into the kingdom of God, right? So this is also, one is, it's a technical term. Another is practically also we can see. So who is the father and mother of Krishna? It is Vasudeva and Devaki. So where Vasudeva is there, that is where Krishna will appear. So Vasudeva means, it is also the name of a state of existence. Vasudeva means the purified state of existence. And Vasudeva Sattva, where is Vasudeva? There only Vasudeva will appear. Vasudeva means the son of Vasudeva is called Vasudeva. So this Vasudeva state of existence is very, very important. That is the purified consciousness of goodness, purified goodness. So the material modes, that is goodness, passion, and ignorance, all these three things are material only. It is not spiritual. Even the material mode of goodness is also, it is material. And this pure mode of goodness means to have complete conviction that I am a spirit soul and I am part and parcel of the Lord. I am meant to render service to the Lord. So that is a state called the Vasudeva state, right? So a person has to reach to that state gradually. So we may also remember in this connection that the process of gradual emancipation by the devotee in the manner mentioned above, although authoritative, is not viable in the present age because of people's being primarily unaware of yoga practice. So this gradually, like one by one, the material components are removed, and then the subtle senses are removed, and the mind is removed, and then gradually a person is getting liberation in that way. That's a very, very technical yogic process, as we had mentioned before, and it is not possible for people in general in this age. And for us, what is recommended is Bhakti Yoga. So that is chanting the names of the Lord and being engaged practically in the service of the Lord, and that will take care of all these reversal processes automatically. Okay, so the so-called yoga practice by the professional, what is this? Protagonists. Protagonists. I don't know the meaning of this. What is this? The leading character, or one of the major character in a drama, movie, or a novel. Okay. So this is called the so-called yoga practice by the professional protagonist. May be physiologically beneficial. So for the body, it may be beneficial, definitely. But such small successes cannot help one in attainment of spiritual emancipation, as mentioned herein. 5,000 years ago, when the social status of human society was in perfect Vedic order, the yoga process mentioned herein was a common affair for everyone, because everyone, and especially the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, was trained in the transcendental art under the care of spiritual master, far away from the home, in the status of brahmacharya. So this was very important. During 5,000 years before, when the scriptures were all written by Vyasadev, at that point in time, the yogic process was quite common, because people were trained in those things, right from the childhood. So even if a boy is a if a child is a son of a king, he should also go to the Gurukul, and he should live as a servant of the spiritual master there. There he cannot go and say, oh, like, no, I am the prince, you don't know, like, no, why are you treating me like this? No, even the son of the king has to go out begging, for service of the spiritual master. And in that way, he would he would do all the menial services, he would do cleaning, he would do all the menial services, and then the spiritual master would train him in these arts of yogic processes and things like that. So in the childhood, all the children, they would go to Gurukul, and they would live as a servant of the spiritual master, and they would get trained in that way. But no, nowadays that social system is not there. So brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, no, all these things are not there. Forget about training. No, nowadays the children has so much access to YouTube, Netflix, and so many things, and whatnot they are seeing in these things, we don't know. So practically brahmacharya is completely lost in the modern culture, right? So if there is no restriction of senses, then there is no knowledge. Knowledge means only when restriction of senses is there, there is knowledge. It is like if we have a pot, and then if it has a hole if the pot has a hole in it, so then how much of water you fill in, it will all drain out. In the same way, if we don't have sense control, that means we have holes in the pot, and we can never fill ourselves with knowledge. All the knowledge that we are gaining will all go draining out, because the senses are not controlled, right? So it is very, very important, this at least when we come to the practice of devotional service, we should try to see that our senses are moderated. All the senses has its right use, and it should be moderated in its use. So then we can actually hold up some knowledge in our system. Otherwise, no, knowledge is not possible, right? And then one may ask, like, people are having so much of knowledge, they are studying in so many big universities, and they're getting big degrees and things like that. Oh, that is not knowledge that we are talking about. Knowledge means to know that I am spirit soul, and to act on the platform of spirit soul. That's knowledge. We had been discussing about this point quite a number of times. Knowledge means, I am spirit soul, and to understanding that I am spirit soul, and to act on the platform of spirit soul. And the modern education is only increasing our affinity towards body and things which are connected to body. It's more bringing our consciousness on the material platform. So it is technically, scripturally, it is called as avidya. All that education that is going on in this world, it is technically and scripturally called as avidya, or ignorance, right? So this we don't even consider as knowledge. Real knowledge means to understand I am spirit soul. I am Atma. This body is just like a shirt I'm wearing, and it is something that is superimposed on me. I am not this body. I am not the I am not what, I am not a man or a woman or a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian. So this is all external designations. I am spirit soul. I am spirit soul. I am Atma. I am connected to the super soul, the Supreme Lord, and I am meant to render service to the Supreme Lord. So that's the status. That's real knowledge. And this kind of knowledge we will see, many times, these people have told me this, like when you are taking a class, we are feeling it, it is what you're saying is good, and I'm able to practice it for some time, but then after that, like, everything goes off. I'm not able to practice it. Oh, that is because we are in the initial stages, and we don't know how to patch up the holes which are there in our pot. And how much our knowledge is poured in few days it will all drain out, right? So if we have to catch up the knowledge, if we have to hold up the knowledge, then we have to patch the holes. That is by the control of the senses, right? So that is why in the past, before a person enters into the grahastha ashram, so he goes through the ashram of brahmacharya, and he is very, very nicely trained on the sense control. He is very nicely trained, and in the brahmacharya ashram, he cannot have any association of women. He cannot even see any of the opposite sex. If the spiritual master is married, then he may have only access to the spiritual master's wife, and Atma Mata Gurur Patni Brahmani Rajapatnika Dhenu Dhatri Tata Prithvi Saptaita Matarasmrita. And spiritual master's wife is considered to be mother, and he has very, very submissive service attitude. There is no concept of what is that looking upon women in a derogatory way. No, that's completely not there in the Vedic culture. But then nowadays it is going very bad because of wrong portrayal of these things which is happening in films or in all the social media and things like that, right? So it is very, very bad. So this brahmacharya is very essential for learning, getting in the knowledge. So then after such a training, if a person is allowed into the grahastha ashram, he knows how to properly utilize the senses and not to exploit the senses, right? So that's something that's very much important. So okay, so let's continue the purport. Modern man, however, is incompetent to understand it perfectly. This whole aspect of knowledge, it is not possible. This whole yoga system is not possible for modern man to understand. Living in the city and exploiting the senses, and then saying that I am doing some yoga. So this is all bogus. This is not possible. Lord Sri Chaitanya therefore made it easier for the prospective devotee of the present age in the following specific manner. So this is how Lord Chaitanya has recommended us to practice this process of yoga. So that is practical for this age. Ultimately, there is no difference in the result. The first and the foremost point is that one must understand the prime importance of bhakti yoga. The living beings in different species of life are undergoing different terms of engagement. Engagement means, cage means like it is like a prison cage. So engagement means like, we are put into this body, we are put into this cage of this body. So that is called engagement, right? So the living beings in different species of life are undergoing different terms of engagement. So that means like in this body of the male, I am going through a particular term of prisonhood. And then after that, I may be put into a dog's body or a cat body and things like that. So different terms of engagement is going on, right? So according to their fruitive actions and reactions. So if I do some very abominable actions, then I have to be put into animal body, right? So, but in the execution of different activities, one who secures some resources in bhakti yoga can understand the importance of service to the Lord through the causeless mercy of the Lord as well as that of the spiritual master. So when we are there in this different, when we are serving this imprisonment in different kinds of bodies, if we are very fortunate enough, we may come in touch with a devotee of the Lord, and we may get this idea that we have to become servant of the Lord and things like that. A sincere soul is helped by the Lord through meeting a bona fide spiritual master and the representative of the Lord. By the instructions of such a spiritual master, one gets the seed of bhakti yoga. Here, seed means the desire for performing devotional service. That is called the seed, right? So the Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends that a devotee sow the seed of bhakti yoga in his heart and nurture it by watering of hearing and chanting the holy name, fame, etc. of the Lord. So now first is that we get the seed of devotional service, that is desire to render service to the Lord, and then that has to be watered. A seed, if we sow in the soil, then it has to be watered, then the plant gradually sprouts. So what is this sprouting process? What is this watering process? That is hearing and chanting. So when we meet a devotee, he immediately says, you should chant the names of the Lord and you should hear it carefully. And then now in the afternoon sessions, like we are hearing about the Lord from Srimad Bhagavatam, the greatest of the literatures, right? So this is the watering process. So when this watering process is continuing, then the seed will sprout and it will gradually grow into a small plant and tree and things like that. So, okay, let's continue. The simple process of offenseless chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord will gradually promote one very soon to the stage of emancipation. That means it will take us to the point of liberation. So it's so easy, right? So every day simply we are logging in and we are hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is the watering process, and we have a desire to serve the Lord, so then this process itself can take us back to the spiritual world. Now that's how powerful is this process, right? So there are three stages in the chanting that holy name of the Lord. The first stage is offensive chanting of the holy name. The second stage is reflective stage of the chanting of the holy name. And the third stage is offenseless chanting of the holy name of the Lord. So we technically call it as Namaparad and Namabhasa and then Shuddhanam. So Namaparad means chanting the names with all offenses, and Namabhas means clearing stage. Almost all the offenses are cleared, but then the real holy name is not still manifested, right? And then third stage is called Shuddhanam. Shuddhanam means like pure holy names, no, without any offenses, right? So this we are expected to gradually progress to the pure chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So then if we can do Shuddhanam, so then we are already liberated. No, then we are like, no, it's just matter of time. We just have to give up our body and we will end up in the spiritual world, right? So the third stage is the offenseless chanting of the holy name of the Lord. In the second stage, only the stage of in the second stage only, the stage of reflection between the offensive and offenseless stage, one automatically attains the stage of emancipation. So this is a very important point. No, emancipation means salvation or liberation, right? So liberation is possible even not like even before what is that? Getting into Shuddhanam. Shuddhanam means you can even enter into the spiritual planets, but the liberation from the material world can be attained even by chanting the this one Namabhas. No, Namabhas stage can award liberation. So, and in the offenseless stage, one actually enters into the kingdom of God. Yeah, that's what we were discussing now. Although physically he may apparently be within the material world, to attain the offenseless stage, one must be on guard in the following manner, right? So now Prabhupada is going to describe the, I suppose like, no, he's going to describe the various offenses in chanting the holy names. And if we can avoid these offenses and chant the holy names of Lord, it is really, really very powerful. And we can make immense spiritual progress by doing the simple process, right? So when we speak of hearing and chanting, it means that not only should one chant and hear the holy name of Lord as Rama, Krishna, or systematically the 16 names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But one should also read and hear the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in association of devotees. Now that we are doing now. So we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of devotees. The primary practice of Bhakti Yoga will cause the seed already sown in the heart to sprout, and by regular watering process, as mentioned above, the Bhakti Yoga creeper will begin to grow. By systematic nurturing, the creeper will grow to such an extent that it will penetrate the coverings of the universe, as we have heard in the previous verses, reach the effulgent sky, the Brahma Jyoti, and go further and further and reach the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. Above all of them is Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan, wherein the growing creeper enters and takes repose at the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the original personality of Godhead. When one reaches the lotus feet of Lord Krishna at Goloka Vrindavan, the watering process of hearing and reading, as also chanting of the holy name, is in the pure devotional stage fructifies, and the fruits grown there in the form of love of God are tangibly tasted by the devotee, even though he is here in this material world. The ripe fruit of love of God are relished only by the devotees constantly engaged in watering process as described above. But the working devotee must always be mindful so that the creeper which has so grown will not be cut off. Therefore, he should be mindful of the following considerations. So these are the offenses that Prabhupada is going to mention. And if we are careful not to commit these offenses, then this creeper, what is growing, will be protected. This creeper will not be destroyed. So if there is a creeper is there, some animals can come and eat, or some animals can just step over it and go, and the creeper will get spoiled. In the name of devotion, so many people are speaking so many things without reference to Srimad Bhagavatam or without reference to Bhagavad Gita, or sometimes in the name of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, they are just speaking some nonsense. So if we hear all those things, so then our bhakti lata or our creeper of devotion will get smashed and it will get completely torn apart. So we should be very careful to grow this creeper in an authorized way. No, so that is why it is mentioned anusevaya, anusmaranti, like that. It is very important. This word anu means to follow in the footsteps of great acharyas. No, here we are very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has given us this purport, and he also claims that it is not just my purport. It is the previous acharyas like Rupa Goswami, Sridhar Swami, and Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, like that. No, all these great personalities' commentaries are included in this Bhagavatam, and it is served to us in the form of English language. And we are so fortunate that whole lot of commentaries of many great acharyas have been served in a way that we can understand and in a contemporary way. So this is the greatness of the parampara. When we access this knowledge through parampara, we get the knowledge in a proper form, and then that is going to help us go back to the spiritual world. The sticking on to the parampara is a very important aspect. The Lord also likes devotees practicing in this way, right? So we should not just hear from any upstarts. We should hear only from the parampara. And if anybody goes against these scriptures, then they are called they will not attain the proper destination. In fact, in this connection, there is one nice pastime is there. So there is one person in the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he actually wrote a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he wanted Lord Chaitanya to hear that commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Lord Chaitanya told, like, what is so special about your commentary? So then he says, one of the previous acharyas, like even before Lord Chaitanya appeared, there were many other great devotees were there. So one of them was Sridhar Swami. And this devotee, this person, he told that I have explained Srimad Bhagavatam even more better than Sridhar Swami. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that if you have rejected the Acharya's words and if you have come up with your own speculative understanding, then I reject your commentary. I don't even want to hear you. I don't even want to hear you. So that is how strict it is, actually. This knowledge, this is an etiquette. If the previous acharyas, they all are liberated souls, like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, all these great personalities, they are liberated souls. And if I come to profess that I have got a kind of understanding about spirituality, which is different from theirs or which is greater than theirs, immediately I should be discounted as a fool, number one, and my speech should not be heard after that. So it is very important to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, and whatever conclusions that they have given, we should just simply accept that, because they have traversed this path and they have given us the route map. And if we also traverse this path, then we will be able to get to the destination. Otherwise, it is very difficult. So this sampradaya and this parampara things, it is very important, and which has to be kept very strictly, right? So if we lose it, it is not only lost for us, it is lost for the next generation, it is lost for all the generations to come. So that is why this parampara system is very important to keep it alive. And for that matter, even Lord Krishna also tells in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara praptam imam raja rishyo viduhu sakaleneha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. So he says that this knowledge was passed down in parampara. That's the system which I have designed. And then the parampara was going on nicely, and sakaleneha mahata, because of the great influence of the time, this knowledge as it is appeared to be lost. And that's why I have come here now personally to redistribute this knowledge. So it is so important. The Supreme Lord personally comes if the parampara gets lost. That's how important it is. It is very important for us to understand and sink in, and then pass it on to the next generation. So we are just like postmen. We have to simply keep this knowledge and keep passing it on to the generations that to come. Okay, so let's read these offenses that we need to carefully avoid while chanting the holy names of the Lord. And if we can do that, we are going to make immense progress in spiritual life. Really very powerful these things are. So let's see these offenses. First offense at the feet of a pure devotee may be likened to the mad elephant who devastates a very good garden if it enters. So if we offend a devotee of the Lord, so then our bhakti creeper becomes completely destroyed. No, it is like a mad elephant which enters into a garden which will destroy everything, right? So we should not offend any devotees of the Lord. And one must be very careful to guard himself against such offense at the feet of pure devotees, just as one protects a creeper by all-round fencing. So it so happens that by the watering process, some weeds are also grown, and unless such weeds are uprooted, the nurturing of main creeper or the creeper of bhakti yoga may be hampered. Actually, these weeds are material enjoyment, merging of the self in the absolute without separate individuality, and many other desires in the field of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and emancipation. So we should not have any other desire other than to become a servant of the Supreme Lord. Any other desire is called as the weed. And the actual seed is desire for rendering service to Krishna, and the weeds are all other desires, right? So they have to be time to time they have to be uprooted, otherwise it'll spoil the growth, or it will stunt the growth of bhakti yoga creeper. There are many other weeds like disobedience to the tenets of the revealed scriptures, unnecessary engagements, killing animals, and hankering after material gain, prestige, and adoration. If sufficient care is not taken, then the watering process may only help to breed the weeds, stunting the healthy growth of the main creeper and resulting in no fructification of the ultimate requirement, that is love of God. So if we keep watering, if we keep hearing Bhagavatam, but we don't uproot these unwanted desires from the heart, so then sometimes the weeds will grow, and they will grow more stronger than the actual creeper, and our result will not be achieved. The devotee must therefore be very careful to uproot the different weeds in the very beginning. Only then will the healthy growth of main creeper not be stunted. And by so doing, the devotee is able to relish the fruits of love of God and thus live practically with Lord Krishna even in this life and be able to see Lord in every step. The highest perfection of life is to enjoy life constantly in association of the Lord, and one who can relish this does not aspire after any temporary enjoyment of material world via other media, right? So the highest perfection of life is to have constant association of the Lord, and that's possible just by the simple process of chanting and hearing and carefully avoiding the weeds, carefully uprooting the weeds. Okay, so next sloka, text 31. Tenatmanatmanam upaiti shantam anandamananda mayo vashane etam gatim bhagavatim gato yaha savai punarneha visajjate thenga. So only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction in his constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection is never again attracted by this material world, and he never returns. Purport. We should specially note in this verse the description of Gatim Bhagavatim, to become engaged in the race of Parabrahman, this Supreme Personality of Godhead, as desired by Brahmavadi impersonalist, is not Bhagavatim perfection. The Bhagavatas never accept merging in the impersonal race of the Lord, but always aspire after personal association with the Supreme Lord in one of the Vaikuntha spiritual planets in the spiritual sky. So we see here many of the organizations, they say that the perfection of life is to merge in the Brahma Jyoti and things like that. So lose your identity and merge in the Brahma Jyoti. Let your identity be not there. So that is not supported by the Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam says, we have to, Gatim Bhagavatim. Bhagavan means the Supreme Lord, and Bhagavatam means like, anything that is connected to the Supreme Lord. So our destination, or what Bhagavatam is recommending, is that we also should become like the Bhagavatam. We also should become connected to the Supreme Lord. It is not describing that we have to become merged with the Supreme Lord, or we have to become merged with the Brahma Jyoti. That is not mentioned here. So the thing that is recommended is we should go to one of the Vaikuntha planets, and there we should render service to the Supreme Lord. The whole of the spiritual sky, of which the total number of material skies is only an insignificant part, is full of unlimited number of Vaikuntha planets, right? So the Tripada Vibhuti, it is called, or the energy of the Lord, which is 3/4 in nature, is the Vaikuntha sky, and there innumerable Vaikuntha planets are there. And Ekapada Vibhuti is the material world, that is 1/4 of the whole sky, and that is the material sky. And in that we see so many universes, so many planets are there. Then we can imagine Vaikuntha planets, they're innumerable, so they are like more in number than the material world, right? The destination of the devotee, the Bhagavata, is to enter into one of the Vaikuntha planets, in which the personality of Godhead, in his unlimited personal expansions, enjoy himself in the association of unlimited number of pure devotee associates. So there are unlimited number of pure devotees that are there in the spiritual world, and we will become one of them. We will join that party. The conditioned souls in the material world, after gaining emancipation by devotional service, are promoted to these planets, but the number of ever liberated souls is far, far greater than the number of conditioned souls in the material world. And the ever liberated souls in the Vaikuntha planets never care to visit this miserable material world. So it's like, Prabhupada sometimes gives the example of jail and the civil space. So if in the city planning, everyone plans for various things, and there is a jail also is planned, and the jail is planned very small. Generally a small portion of people will become criminals, and they have to be kept in the jail. So that's the position of the material world. The Vaikuntha world is the civil space, and the material world is the jail. And we can imagine in like how much big the Vaikuntha space will be, like the civil space will be. So, okay, the impersonalists who aspire to merge in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Supreme Lord, but have no conception of loving devotional service to Him in His personal form, in the spiritual manifestation, may be compared to certain species of fish who, being born in the river and rivulets, migrate to the great ocean. They cannot stay in the ocean indefinitely, for their urge for sense gratification brings them back to the rivers and streams to spawn. Okay, so there are backward streams are there from the ocean. So these people like who don't know how to go to the depths of the ocean and really relish the depths of the devotion, they will again get into the rivers of some sense gratification or economic development and things like that and all. So they will get into some petty things like that. Similarly, when the materialist becomes frustrated in his attempts to enjoy himself in the limited material world, he may seek impersonal liberation by merging either in the causal ocean or with the Brahmajyoti effulgence. However, as neither the causal ocean nor impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence afford any superior substitute for association and engagement of the senses, the impersonalist will fall again into the limited material world to become entangled once more in the wheel of birth, death, drawn on by the inextinguishable desire for sensual engagement. But any devotee who enters the kingdom of God by transcendental engagement of his senses in devotional service, and who associates with the liberated souls and the personality of Godhead there, will never be attracted to the limited surrounding of the material world. So this is a very, very important concept. So many of the spiritual organizations, they say that, okay, you just have to empty all your thoughts. You become zero in your thoughts, and you just meditate like that, and then you will attain liberation and things like that. That sort of liberation is condemned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, because it is, if we get to that kind of liberation, then we'll again have to fall back into the material world and then get into this whole cycle of birth, death and things like that. Why? Because this sort of liberation is not going to give a person complete satisfaction. The liberation of going back to the Vaikuntha planets and being engaged in the service of the Lord is a permanent liberation. And that is, we have often seen this particular shloka, E anye ravindaksha vimuktamaninas tvayastabhava davishuddha buddhaye aruhya tuchena param padam tata patanti ada anadrata yushmadandreye. So if we are not like taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, whatever great liberation we may get into, we will have to again fall into this material world. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam says. Okay, in Bhagavad Gita 8:15 also, the same is confirmed. The Lord says, the great Mahatmas or Bhakti Yogis, after attaining my association, never come back to this material world, no, which is full of miseries and is non-permanent. The highest perfection of life, therefore, is to attain his association and nothing else. Bhakti Yogi, being completely engaged in the Lord's service, has no attraction for any other process of liberation like jnana or yoga. A pure devotee is 100% devotee of the Lord and nothing more. We should further note in this verse the two words Shantam and Anandam, which denotes that devotional service of Lord can really bestow upon devotee two important benedictions, namely peace and satisfaction. The impersonalist is desirous of becoming one with the Supreme, or in other words, he wants to become the Supreme. It is a myth only. The mystic yogis become encumbered by various mystic powers and so have neither peace nor satisfaction. So neither the impersonalist nor the yogi can, yogi means generally it is called as the Ashtanga yogi is called the general yogi. So neither impersonalist nor the yogi can have real peace and satisfaction, but the devotee can become fully peaceful and satisfied because of his association with the complete whole, right? Therefore, merging in absolute or attaining some mystic power has no attraction for the devotee. Attainment of love of God means complete freedom from all other attractions. The conditioned soul has many aspirations, such as becoming a religious man, a rich man, or a first class enjoyer, or becoming a god himself, or becoming powerful like the mystics and acting wonderfully by getting anything or doing anything. But all these aspirations should be rejected by the prospective devotee who actually wants to revive his dormant love of God, right? So we should not be also so-called religious men. So there are so many religious men, so-called religious men are there. They will do some puja, which is self-concocted or which doesn't have any scriptural backing, and then they just, they just are very proud about that they are religious. They are doing something in connection with God, and they also don't know like what they are doing, right? So but then those things will not help us. We have to go by the scriptures and we have to revive the dormant love of God, right? So the impure devotees aspire after all of the above mentioned material things by perfection of devotion, but a pure devotee has none of the tinges of the above contaminations, which are the influence of material desires, impersonal speculation, and attainment of mystic powers. One can attain the stage of love of God by pure devotional service or by a learned labor of love for the sake of devotee's lovable object, the personality of Godhead. So, our goal is clear. We want to attain the lotus feet of the Lord, and for that we need to have a learned labor of love. So, it's a very important thing. Sometimes people say, like, why should we study all these things? And God is there and I have a relationship with God and I have my emotions and sentiments towards God. Why should I go through all these things? I know how to love God, or I know how to worship God and things like that. But then that is not approved in the Vedic scriptures. So it is a learned labor of love. It is the knowledge aspect has to accompany. Otherwise we may be doing something material and falsely imagining that I'm spiritual. That is something very important. So many spiritual practices, we can name it, we can say that it's all material. So all the so-called spiritual practices which has been propagated a lot in the Kali Yuga, we can just read the scriptures and just try to match. None of the principles of Bhagavad Gita will be followed there. So, and it is just simply namesake, it is called spiritual, right? And we should not get into those things. We should have a proper understanding of the scriptures, and we should go in a guided path of attaining our desirable lovable object, that is the Supreme Lord himself, right? Okay, so to be more clear, if one wants to attain the stage of love of Godhead, he must give up all desires of material enjoyment. He should refrain from worshipping any of the demigods, and he should devote himself only to the worship of Supreme Personality of Godhead. He must give up the foolish idea of becoming one with the Lord and the desire to have some wonderful powers just to get the ephemeral adoration of the world. The pure devotee is only favorably engaged in the service of the Lord without any hope of emolument. This will bring about love of God, or the stage of Shantam and Anandam, and as stated in this verse, right? So it has to have no one-pointed devotion to the Lord, no chaste devotion to the Lord, right? So we have to be very, very chaste towards the devotion, to the Lord. It's not that, this God is also okay, that God is also okay, and things like that. That will not work out. First of all, we should know all the gods that we are talking about, they are all administrative heads. And if I want to become Indra or any powerful devata or demigod, I can apply for the post and I can become one of them. So, but no, nobody can become Vishnu. Vishnu is the supreme personality of Godhead, and no, he lives in Vaikuntha planet. And all other devatas, who are technically called as demigods or the administrative heads of various departments of the world, so they are also living entities like us, and they are staying in this material world in a planet which is little above us. That's all. No, they are not part of the spiritual world. No, and by worshipping them, no, because they are also material, their results will also be material, and they also will be temporary. We will not get no tangible spiritual benefits from them, and that is very much evident. There are 33 crore different devatas or demigods. They are there, and the topmost of all of them is Lord Brahma. And Hiranyakashipu worshipped him, and then he told, "I want to become immortal." And then Lord Brahma said, like, "No, I also have to die one day. No, I cannot give you immortality. You ask me something else." So then he starts asking, "No, I should not die outside, inside, and stuff like that and all." So Hiranyakashipu's boons that we know. So that is the position of the Devata. Devata cannot give us permanent life, because they themselves, their lives are also temporary, right? Ah Brahma Bhavana Loka Punaravirtino Arjuna. So this is what Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. And then he also says, Yanti Devan Vrata Devan Pitrin Yanti Pitruvata Bhutani Yanti Bhutejya Yanti Mam Yajinopima okay, so I'm forgetting the last word. So basically the thing is, if we worship the Devatas, we will go to the Devatas, and which is also one of the material planets. They are also residing on one of the material planets. Forget about liberation. We are not going to get, if we are doing the Devata worships. So we should worship the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Then we can aim at liberation, right? So that's why Vishnu is called as Mukunda. Mukunda means one who is the Vidata of Mukti. One who is the giver of Mukti is called Mukunda. So only by worshipping Mukunda we can get liberation or entrance into the spiritual planets, right? So let's go to the next sloka, text 32. Ete Sri the Nripaveda Gite Tvaya Piprishte cha Sanathane cha Ye Vai Pura Brahmana Ah Tushta Aradito Bhagavan Vasudeva. Okay, let's see how big is this. Okay, we will try to finish this. Your Majesty Maharaj Parikshit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. So this is amazing. Just now we were discussing anusevaya, anusmaranti, and things like that, to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. And here Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken 5,000 years before, Shukadeva Goswami is telling, I am not telling my own mental speculation. I am telling you what is there in the Vedas. And that's the way of speech. Proper speech means we have to speak for upholding the principles of the Vedas, and we should not just speak anything and everything, right? So purport: the two different ways of reaching the spiritual sky and thereby getting emancipation from material bondage, namely either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God by gradual process through the other higher planets of universe, are set forth exactly according to the version of the Vedas. The Vedic version in this connection are okay, so there is a lot of Sanskrit here. Yada sarve pramuchyante kamaye sha hridi shritaha ata matyo mrito bhavatyatra brahma samsnute Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And terchir abhisam bhavanti, again Brahmaranyaka Upanishad, another statement. Those who are free from all material desires, which are disease of the heart, are able to conquer death and enter the kingdom of God through Archi planets. So this is gradual ascending. From now we are an Earth planet, then go to the heaven, then go to like Swarga, then after that Makara, then after that no Jana and stuff like that. Going through that kind of a path is mentioned here. These Vedic versions corroborate the version of Srimad Bhagavatam, and later is further confirmed by Shukadeva Goswami, who affirms that the truth was disclosed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Lord Sri Krishna, Vasudev, to Brahma, the first authority on the Vedas. The disciplic succession holds that Vedas were uttered by Lord Krishna to Brahma, then by Brahma to Narada, by Narada to Vyasa, and then Vyasa to Shukadeva Goswami, and so on. So there is no difference between the versions of all authorities. The truth is eternal, and as such, there cannot be any new opinion about the truth. That is the way of knowing the knowledge contained in the Vedas. It is not a thing to be understood by anyone's erudite scholarship or by fashionable interpretations of mundane scholars. There is nothing to be added and nothing to be subtracted, because the truth is truth. One has to accept, after all, some authority. The modern scientists are also authorities for the common man for some scientific truths. The common man follow the version of the scientists. This means that the common man follows the authority. The Vedic knowledge is also received in that way. The common man cannot argue about what is beyond the sky or beyond the universe. He must accept the versions of the Vedas as they are understood by the authorized disciplic succession. In Bhagavad Gita, also same process of understanding the Gita is set forth in the 4th chapter. So just now we discussed Evam Parampara Praptam, that thing. If one does not follow the authoritative version of the Acharyas, he will vainly search after the truth mentioned in the Vedas. Okay, so we will stop here and then we will continue tomorrow. Probably tomorrow we should be able to finish this chapter. Till 37 shlokas are there. So another 5 shlokas are there. So thank you all very much for being so regular in this sessions, and by regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in this way, the watering process is going on, and in this way we can become nice devotees, and all that is troublesome to the heart will be destroyed, and we will soon become nice devotees of the Lord. Right? So thank you very much for your participation. So we will finish here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.